So what we're gonna want to do is we're gonna drag in from the date. We're gonna drag in year. And you'll see we get this like black looking slicer. So maybe we want to change this colors, make them a little bit more interesting. So let's go to the colors and let's click on show all, and it'll open up a new variety of colors for us. So now we can test this out. If you press the play, you'll see it's going to traverse across the years. 13, 14, 15. So yeah. So now that our report, at least this page, is ready, let's use bookmarks to tell a story of what we discovered. So generally, maybe I'll have like a meeting, and I don't want to risk that some of my things won't work as I'm toying with them. So maybe I want to kind of just set certain views instead of filtering while my client is looking at my page. And so I'll click on. In order to set this up, I'm going to click View, and then I'm going to click Bookmarks, and you'll see this new Bookmarks pane will show up. So click on the Add in the Bookmarks pane, and we'll see we get Bookmark 1. Let's rename this to Initial State. And now, like in the Revenue by Country field, let's click on USA. And we'll see that everything filters by USA. And actually, let's turn this off and go back up and then click USA so it's highlighted. Then we're going to click this and we're going to click Spotlight. And it's going to kind of pop this out over everything else. Now that the spotlight is showing, I don't like that this is actually hovering over both. So I'm actually going to kind of do this and try and consolidate this as much as possible. Maybe what we can do here for our sales and our percent growth or our PY sales, we can turn this to 0 so we don't have any decimal places. Same with revenue. Let's make it so that there's 0 decimal places. This should save us a little bit of room. Oh, come on. Let's do that with that percent growth as well. We can turn this to 0. There we go. Oh, what happened? Oh, it's grand total percent of revenue. Just trying to get it a little bit smaller so that it'll fit right there. All right, let's go back. Let's make this. So now when we do the spotlight, we won't see that little gap there. So now that we've done the spotlight, let's create another bookmark and call this, it'll be called bookmark 2. And let's call this USA sales. Oh, I forgot to click this. So delete, create a new one. Let's call this USA sales. Now let's click on Australia. And let's create a new bookmark. Call this AUS sales. So once we've created these 3 bookmarks, let's click on the view in the bookmark panel. And you'll see we have this new bar at the bottom that says bookmark 1 of 3, initial state. And if we click the arrow, we can traverse through, and it'll kind of go back to the views that we saved. One of the cool things I like to do is what you can do is you can create buttons. So, we viewed that in that slideshow mode, which is great for presenting, but maybe we want to make it viable for our users. So, and maybe I don't want to do the spotlight mode. So let's say for US, I'm going to click US here. Oh, I messed up. I can click this US sales. I don't click on the actual bookmark, or it's going to activate the bookmark. Instead, I click on 3 ellipses and I click update. So now when I click on the bookmark, it won't do that spotlight, but it updated it so that all of everything is still switched to US sales because I selected it here. And I can do the same thing for Australia sales. So again, before, if I do it, I'm going to get that that spotlight view, but maybe I don't want that. Maybe I just want it to be filtered by Australia. So I'm going to click on 3 dots and I'll click update. So one of the cool things you can do is you can assign these bookmarks to buttons, and this will give you a kind of a advanced UI UX feature. If you take this to the extreme, you can actually create like iPhone apps where like you could like create a Yelp, for example, where you could put in all the data in the background and then you can create buttons that navigate to certain pages. It would take a long time, but it is possible using Power BI to do something like that. So what I mean by that is you can create a button. So like let's insert a button and let's just use these information buttons for now. And maybe I want to color, we'll turn on the button text so we can see the difference. So this one will be USA. And we can just, we'll change this to the blue. And let's make the icon blue as well. And then maybe we can make a Australia one. So I just copied it right now. And I'm just going to change this to AUS. And then the icon, we can change that color. Let's use our red. And we'll just do those 2 for now. And what we could do is you'll see that if you click on this, it doesn't do anything. If you control click on it, it doesn't do anything. But what you can do is you can assign an action to buttons. So we're going to click on action. We're going to turn this on. You'll see there's a type back, but there's also drill through, page navigation, Q&A, web URL, bookmark. And so here we can click on USA sales for the bookmark that we want to activate. And similarly for Australia, we're going to turn on the action, switch it to bookmark, and we're going to change this to Australia sales. So now if you click on it, control click in the desktop, but regular click in the Power BI service, you'll see it'll activate the bookmark here. And so now I can toggle and I can have my users toggle by the different views that I set in my bookmarks. Similarly, this is for like filtering data. You can also use bookmarks for displaying images. So let's say let's say I have these 2 bookmarks here, and I want a bookmark that opens and closes the different filters. So like I want this to show when I have filters. So right now I'm going to add a button. Let's do a blank button this time. And let's add the button text. Let's call this country selection. Yeah. So let's just leave it there. And then the reason there's some stuff at the top is we can align it to top there. It's a little bit smaller. So let's say I don't want these to show unless this gets selected. So bear with me, this might take a little time. But what we're gonna do is first I'm gonna copy it and I'm gonna place one exactly on top of it. And so the first one is gonna be when I haven't selected it, and the second one is going to be when I have selected it, and so I can turn it off. So I want to change the color of the button, so I know that I have it selected. I'm going to do a light blue, and I'm going to change the button text as well to that light blue, and change that border or outline to that light blue as well. All right. So when I have it selected, it'll be light blue. When I don't have it selected, it'll be black. So what we're then going to do is we're going to go to our view, and we're going to add the selection panel in. And you'll see that we have all of the visuals on our page. You know, we have 4 buttons, we have our year slicer, we have our different matrices and whatnot. So one thing we can do is we can rename these buttons so they'll be a little bit more obvious. So this one is, let's call this selected. And let's call this default. And then let's call this one Australia, so we know which one, we're differentiating them, and we'll call this one USA. So when, again, we're going to stack this on top of each other. When it is not selected, we're going to want to, or when it is on default, we don't want selected Australia or USA to show. So this is kind of what it will look like, right? When the other one is selected, we're going to want them on. So we're going to turn that one off, the default off, and we're going to turn selected AUS and Australia. When it is selected, we want everything on, right? So that's kind of the states that we're going to set. And what we can do is we can limit this toggling of visuals to be on and off by just these 4 visuals. So what I'm going to do is this is going to be my state for when it is selected. So I'm going to select all 4. I'm going to click add. Then I'm going to click selected visual here. So it only works on these 4. And I'm going to call this country on. Now I'm going to flip these because I want the opposite state to be occurring. And I'm going to select all 4. I'm going to click add. I'm going to do selected visual. I'm going to do country off. The other thing we want to do is I only want it to work on the display. I don't want it to like change the data when I click it. So I'm going to turn off data here. And I'm going to turn off data here as well. So what that data is going to do is if it was selected, it's going to work like the bookmarks we did for Australia and US, and it's going to save, it's going to flip the report to the data that was filtered when I created that bookmark. In this case, I don't want it to default to USA all the time. I just want it to be, I just want it to change the display. I don't want it to change it to USA. So then we're going to, like we did before, assign the button to a particular state. So what's confusing about this is when this one is off, I actually want it to switch to on. So the action is that I actually turned it on and it flips to the other state. So we can test this by holding Control, clicking this button, and you'll see it switched over to the other one. And then I'm going to turn this one, turn this to a bookmark, and switch this to off. When I toggle it now, it gives that visual illusion that this is actually being selected, but in fact, it's 2 visuals toggling back and forth. But now I can turn on my little selections and yeah, set it like that. It's a little confusing. There are some bugs. I don't know if they fixed it, but generally when you create these selected visual filters, you have to do the selected visual in the data like right when you create them. If you don't, the update button is buggy. I don't know if they fixed this. This was like an issue a year back. Um, but the generally what you had to do is you would have to delete the bookmark and recreate it, and so it was a hassle. Um, and what I tell my clients is like, this is a really cool feature. It allows you to create some really cool visualizations, some really cool UX features for your reports. Um, but it is a hassle, and it is if you add new things to your report, you have to rebuild your bookmarks. And so my advice is if you're going to apply like advanced bookmarks and buttons, that you do this at the very end and push it as far to the end of your project as possible. It's going to save you a lot of time and it's going to save your client a lot of money. Um, but yeah, very cool feature there. Um, generally, I might do something like this for different slices, but there are some things that can't be accomplished by filters, and that's really where the buttons and bookmarks shine. For example, certain visuals, you'll realize that you can, drill down and whatnot between different axes, but you might not be able to switch the measure. And so someone might be like, okay, um, on one hand, I want to see uh, revenue, and on the other hand, I want to see percent growth. How do I toggle between them? One way you can accomplish that is bookmarks and buttons. You can basically create two different, charts here, one with revenue and one with percent growth, and get them to toggle between themselves. And uh, yeah, it's easier than there really is no easy way to do that from the default options, and buttons and bookmarks might be your best bet. Any questions so far? I'm going to show you one other way to do that that includes DAX. No? Okay. So this will be kind of my last section for this webinar, and next webinar we'll get on to uploading and sharing the report. But another way, so in that example, I talked about, hey, maybe your user wants to see revenue and percent growth. And there's not really an easy way to toggle it. I can drag and drop percent growth in here, or I can drag and drop revenue in here, but there's not really an easy way to do this. So there is a way to do that and use a slicer without using buttons and bookmarks. And requires DAX. And so once you kind of get into Power BI and you're comfortable kind of doing the basics, and once you have to start fulfilling client requests or your boss's requests or whatnot, um, there are some really cool ways to develop reports, and you should start getting used to developing your visualizations in tandem with developing in DAX. So in order to get this to switch between growth and revenue, I'm going to use a switch statement. So first, I'm going to create a new table, modeling, new table, and I'm going to call the table measure. Oh, sorry, let's not do new table in DAX. Sorry, let's go out of that, forget that. Go to enter data. And we're going to click, this will give us a little dialog box here, and we're going to click, call this measure, and let's call this measure selection. And we're going to do one that says revenue and one that says percent growth, and then click load. Now let's say you messed up those entries and you made a typo, right? And so when you go here, you look at your measure selection and you have a typo here. It's like, oh, how do I change that? You're gonna have to go to home, transform data, and you'll find that measure selection that you created. You can click on those little gear icons next to source, and that's going to bring back that dialog box. And here you can, edit your entries so that it's now correct. After you're done, click close and apply. So we have this new table that's one column. It has revenue and growth. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new DAX measure based on, or let me show you real quick. We'll drag the measure and growth into our table. So go to measure selection, then measure. We're going to drag this in. We're going to turn this into a slicer like we did before, and we'll see that we have these two options. And the question is, all right, we have this random table with these two columns. If I select something, nothing happens, right? Obviously, it's just a random table, an island in the middle of nowhere. If we go to the modeling, there's really no place, modeling works off of columns. It doesn't necessarily work off of measures. So how do we get this to connect to our sales? We can drag it to one, but we can't drag it to both. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a DAX measure in sales, new measure, not column, new measure. And we're going to say measure switch is what we're going to call it. And the formula is going to be switch, which is like an extended if statement. And the expression is going to be, we want the first non-blank in our measure selection, measure column. And just for the formula, we have to do this twice. So what this is saying is based off of the evaluation of that expression, based on the first one selected, if it says percent growth, we want to return the percent growth function or measure. If it says revenue, we want to return the revenue function. In this case, I'm just going to do sum of revenue. Else, let's for this sake, let's just use blank. So it won't show anything if we don't have anything selected. And once you're done there, I'll leave this up for a second so y'all can see it. Let's close these windows, make it a little bigger. So switch, first non-blank, measure selection, measure selection, measure, and parentheses for that first non-blank. Our next for the switch statement is the name of the column, or the name of the entry, percent growth, which matches here. And then we want to show percent growth, which we created earlier. And then revenue, which is here. And then we call a calculation on the fly, sum of sales revenue. Else, if neither of these conditions are met, that this doesn't equal this or this does not equal this, then we'll show blank. Once we're done with that, we're going to go to our visual here, and we're going to drag this measure switch into the value section. And now you'll see that when we have revenue selected, it's going to show revenue. But if we show growth, it'll show growth. Granted, it's in millions because we have that, this general, sorry, where is it? Sorry, wrong box, that's why. Data labels, we have it in millions. If we set it to auto, we'll get that nice decimal now. This will be in billions though. So maybe, we have billions here and we have percent growth here, but this doesn't necessarily work with how we wanted it to display. We wanted it like before. So what we can do is we can go into our measure switch and we can start editing it out. So I hit that little arrow to expand this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here and click Shift Enter to kind of organize it a little bit better. Similarly, if I want to add in some comments, I can do a little dash and I can say if measure selection measure equals, so that dash that green is commented out, it's not going to be evaluated. So if it equals percent growth, then, and similarly, shift enter if it equals revenue, then. So that's kind of the explanation of what this function does, so other users will know. Else. So one thing I might want to do is I might want to change this. I might want to format percent growth. So I could do format. I'll take the value. I want to do a comma, and I'm going to do quotations percent. So I want it to format as a percent. So now let's go back. Maybe that was wrong. We have to type in percent. Let me look up the formatting really quick. Should be percent. Yeah, it should be percent. Let's get rid of this blank statement here. And then because we have it as a either or, we can just do that as the end else statement here. Why doesn't it let me format here? I'll have to figure out the formatting and get back to y'all. But generally, you can use format within your switch statement to then switch out the visualization formatting. Other than that, that's how I would, if I wasn't using buttons to switch this visual, I would have to create a DAX measure and a DAX lookup table to basically flip this around. So different ways of accomplishing the same thing, pros and cons of both. Obviously, if I did this with buttons and bookmarks, it would be, it's a lot more straightforward. But as I said, it requires a lot more maintenance down the line. So definitely some considerations to think of. The other thing I would consider is DAX is going to operate a little bit faster. It's a calculation versus when you do a button. What's actually happening behind the scenes is all four of these, so 2 country selection buttons plus the USA and Australia button, are all rendering as soon as you open the page. So even if they're not showing, they're still rendering, they're just hidden. So if you do too many buttons, or you have buttons all over the place, and different visuals that are affected, different layers of visuals, they're all rendering. And so your page might end up taking longer to load simply because you have more visualizations going on. So DAX generally is going to work faster if you can get it to be exactly how you want it to be. So just a consideration, but obviously this is still pretty snappy, so not that big of a deal. Any questions? Yeah, that's it then. Thank you for joining us once again. We're meeting tomorrow, so if you haven't signed up for Lab 4, please check it out on Eventbrite. You can also check out our website at dataracy.com, and you can I think we've plugged our social media, so please follow us. As for the YouTube videos, we are a little bit behind on those. We had some technical difficulties in editing those and putting those out, but we'll get those to you shortly for your review. And we also will be doing this series next month. So if you do want to join us, join our community, and be part of our dyads, you're welcome to join again. And if you're interested in helping out and maybe helping others along the way, reach out to us and maybe you can help us with our dyads.